Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Sylvia Loya on the podcast. She's an IFBB Women's Physique Pro coming to us all the way from California. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Sylvia, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Ryan, for having me. I really am flattered that you asked.
Absolutely. And why don't you give us, first of all, before you give us your backstory, though, why don't you give us what the weather's like in California right now today?
Oh, geez, it's beautiful. I think we're about in the high 80s here. I live in the Napa Valley. It's pretty perfect. And if it's too hot, you can always go into one of the restaurants in the area and have this amazing wine and food. And I mean, what's better than that? So.
You're making me jealous already, and we're
No,
not even a
I
minute into the
understand. You should
podcast.
be.
Yeah.
You should be
Oh,
jealous.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Well, we haven't even gotten into your bodybuilding yet, so I'm not even.
Yeah.
That the jealousy's just gonna skyrocket. But why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and what motivated you to get in shape and adapt this healthy and fit lifestyle?
I've always been active as a kid. My father was very instrumental in my clean eating. He was kind of ahead of his time. Went to the farmer's market and got fruits and veggies at that time, and that was like unheard of. Um, we were always like, I was on the swim team. My brother was on the diving team. I did synchronized swimming. I did running. I did, pretty much everything. And it was kind of one of these situations where we didn't have a lot of money, but the city that we lived in um, provided all these activities for the kids, for the residents. And it was because the area where we lived, the property taxes were really low, and it was paid for by the industry around it and that kind of stuff. And lo and behold, I ended up having an ex-Olympian coach. Her name is, and she's still very famous coach, coaching of water polo. She's in the Water Polo Hall of Fame. Her name is Sandra Nita. So she was a teenage Olympian, and she lived in the city, and her parents, obviously, and her. And so she was my first coach, and she was the person that introduced me to weight training, very young, but just a little bit in the off season. Then, I mean, I've always been a runner. I would ride my bike to school. A little bit of it was a little body dysmorphia stuff, the little girl who thinks she's fat kind of thing, which is, when you're 8 years old, you're supposed to have a little chub on you, but you don't know that. Anyway, and I've just always been into something. I loved swimming. I've always loved the empowering feeling that you get from the accomplishment of just improving with a sport. I loved the team camaraderie. I even would make friends with the other team members. I just always have loved it. It was just something I just always enjoyed. My friends always thought I was weird. I was teased and called muscle shoulders and legs since I was about 10 years old. So that was just kind of me, my life. I don't know.
I always remember. I mean, I had a really good friend. She was a swimmer too, and I remember every time I'd hug her. I mean, it's just like you're basically getting lost in that back, and you're just like, oh god, I can't even like wrap my arms around
Yeah,
with that
yeah.
swimmer's back. But yeah, you're the first ever synchronized swimmer that we've ever had on the podcast. So
Yeah,
so there's
I
a
did a
first
little
for
bit of
everything. Yeah.
that. I wasn't I'm not going to say I was, I excelled at it or anything, but I actually did it, and I had a couple friends who were really good at it.
Yeah, and that's awesome because
Hard.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, just even tread and do some of those moves that they have you guys do. I mean, it's
Oh, it
oh
was, I was too much of a loafer to ever get into that. I was just, no, I'll stick to my butterfly.
yeah. I mean, I'm someone. Yeah, that would be almost impossible for me. But when it came to when you really decided to really take things seriously in the gym, do you think that background and having that healthy and fit lifestyle early on and being that swimmer really helped you when it transitioned to the weight training aspect?
I think so. I think because I always had a lot of upper body strength, really good upper body strength. And you have to remember when I started weight training, I was probably late 20s. And in those days there was only bodybuilding and was very new. And that was like Rachel McLish and Gladys Portuguese and these women that I mean, my God, this was a long time ago. Bev Francis was this big deal, that came along a lot later, a little later. I shouldn't say a lot later, but a little later. And she was so muscular and was such a weird, and I thought she was awesome, that so. But it was just a whole different animal. So women, you didn't see women in the gym very much, and I used to get a lot of that. Well, I wouldn't want to look like a man, or I don't know why you'd want to do this or do that. And I mean, because women had no muscles at that time. That wasn't a thing. It was women don't do that. You know, my dad was worried that don't squat because that'll give you a big butt.
That shows how the times have definitely changed than when
Oh
where now
yeah,
everyone's doing squats. But you did. I wasn't gonna mention it until later on, but she did kind of date herself a little bit. How old are you, Sylvia?
I am 60 years old.
Jesus.
I will be 61 in December. I can't believe it either.
Can you give us a flex real quick so we can see what a 6-year-old looks like? It's like, oh,
Let's see.
are you kidding me? That is just absolutely ridiculous. Looking, that's better than people a third her age. That's just absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, I was gonna wait until a
And
little bit
there's
later
there's
on.
more people like me. I mean,
I
there's
know that's
there's
the
some.
thing. I've had about a dozen of them on it. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just the benefits of working out. But yeah, I mean, I was gonna wait to mention that until later on in the podcast to make everyone really just be like, oh my god, that's ridiculous. But when you were getting started in the gym, I mean, I always love to say, if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to, I mean, their diet, their nutrition, how many
Mhm.
reps they do, what exercises they do. So many little things add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. Was that a struggle for you sort of figuring out what worked best for your body? Because I always say if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what did you train for this body part? What works best for them 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you.
Well, what I've always done is I've always had male training partners. That's just something that happened. It wasn't even something where I was, well, let's see, I want to do this. It wasn't a calculated thing on my part. It was more like, a guy saw me. I was a lifeguard because I'm a nurse, and to break the monotony of my job, one year I started working as a lifeguard within that same swimming area, swimming pool I used to work. So I thought I'm going to do this for fun, for the summertime. This guy sees me outside the gym that's also attached to the same swimming area and says, "Hey, you'd be a really good bodybuilder. You should come in and work out one day." So I started. That's how it started, and I just always ended up having male training partners, and they weren't necessarily someone I was dating. They were just guys I worked out with, and I always just did what they did. And I learned quickly that that's what my body liked. So at that age, my God, at let's say at 20s and 30s, I was able to like front squat 195, crazy things like that. And I'd be training with, let's say, a power lifter, and he kicked my butt on lower body, and I'd kick his butt on upper body because I always had a lot of upper body strength from the swimming. So that's just always what worked for me. Diet wise, I wasn't real diet savvy when I was younger. I just kind of ate healthy because I was taught to eat healthy by my dad. We weren't allowed to eat donuts and pizza, none of that, like Domino's pizza to the house. Never. We never, ever, ever had a pizza delivery or any of that because my dad just was not going to have his kids eating that,
You
garbage.
poor thing.
I know it's pretty awful. No, but I'd go, like, I always tell this story to my friends that we'd go to swim practice and then go for donuts on the weekend, right? And I'd be sitting there because my dad would not give me money. And he's like, I am not going to have my kids eating that garbage. I'm just not doing it. And occasionally he'd give me money, but not for the most part. But it sticks with you.
Yeah.
And I think people don't understand how important it is because, one of the things I see is that, you have a lot of bodybuilders and fitness people that are so strict with their own diet, but then their kids eat crap like consistently. And it just kind of baffles me a little bit. It's like, well, why are you allowing your children to eat stuff you won't eat? I mean, that just seems odd, and I don't mean it's not a judgment. It's just kind of an observation, and you're wondering, well, wait a minute, how is this? You know what I mean? It just doesn't calculate to me.
I always say, I mean, we had a health and fitness specialist come on and he was talking about, how important it is. The most important thing actually for, teaching kids, that healthy, ways to eat is, to set that example, like from like what you were talking about from the parents. And that's why, I mean, although at the time you might not have really agreed with what your dad was,
Oh
telling you with donuts or whatnot,
no.
as we can see in hindsight, it has paid off. But yeah, I do see this all the time where I've had bodybuilders on the show and then, their kids, they do let them, get away with stuff when it's like, well, you kind of have the secret where what works best, where they kind of do just let them go a little bit too much, on the
Hmm.
foods. But I'm just like, yeah, it's just so important to instill that early on. But another question that I love to ask, because everyone's genetics are different. So, I mean, everyone always has that one body part when they go to the gym that really, really takes off, that they don't have to train as much. And everyone always has that one body part that just lags behind, that they have to train into overdrive to get it to catch up. I mean, I'll give you my examples first. My back, just because I worked jobs all throughout college of lifting and loading, trucks and warehouses where, you either got a really nice back or you quit. Those are just the two options that were presented to you. I'm also 6'3" though. So my legs and my lower
Yes.
body are just shot where, I mean, I have to train them into absolute overdrive just to get them to look like they are any semblance like they work out at all. I mean, I still have friends that make the joke when I walk in the gym, hey Ryan, you plan on working legs anytime this year? And then I'm just like, oh hey, real funny. I work them out like 2 or 3 times a week, but they still just have such a hard time growing. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
My back has always been my best body part. Back and legs. And I don't know. I mean, I just my back. I'm very. My coach tells me you're very quad dominant. But my back and quads probably are the best, and I love training back. So that's my favorite workout, and it probably has a lot to do with the butterfly and the swimming background. My lagging body parts, which I didn't know till this year, honestly, is my biceps. So my biceps, I'm having a lot of trouble growing.
Okay, we saw her biceps, everyone, and I don't think that that's definitely her legging body part. Okay.
Well, in comparison to the rest of my
Yeah,
body, they're a little
yeah.
bit lagging. So yeah, and I think everybody has something. You know what I mean? Everybody has something like that.
What have you been doing then for your biceps to try to get them to catch up to everything else? Have you just been doing different sets, or have you been trying new routines? What's that been like?
We've actually just been doing a little more frequent. Just increasing the frequency a little bit. Definitely the weight. I think my problem, I'm having a lot of trouble with sleep this year. So I think that's a big one. I think that's the thing. So I'm actually going to go see a sleep specialist. It's gotten so bad. So, and I think for me it appears to be age related. So I'm gonna, because I can't think of anything else. But it could be anything. It could be like the computers and the light and all these little things that people are putting out there. I'm thinking of getting a chili pad, and trying that.
I always say for me, calves are the number one struggling body part for me though, because that's number one genetic. Where I mean, I always said I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't grow an ounce. But yeah, sleep. I mean, that's another huge thing because
Yes.
this is a funny thing though, because I actually had the number one sleep specialist on the planet come on the podcast. He called all the way from Oxford in England, and first of all, he
Oh.
had one of those British accents where you felt like you gained 10 IQ points just from hearing him talk.
Oh.
Where I even told him, I was like, okay, you're just going to talk the entire time and I'm just going to listen, because it was just the most proper British, like the most proper upper class, where I was like, okay, this is the greatest. It's like Sherlock Holmes type of like British,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
you're just like,
yeah.
oh my God. But we were talking because I told him, I have some bodybuilders and I have some, health and fitness guests come on and we, discuss the importance of sleep. And for me too, I mean, I struggle with that where I work night shifts. So, I mean, first of all, my sleep is already messed up enough as it is, where we have some guests on here where they're like, yeah, I get up at like 4 in the morning. I was like, okay, I'm going to bed at 4 in the morning. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard for that. But yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people too where if I don't get my proper amount of sleep, first of all, working out is almost impossible for me if I get like less than 6 hours of sleep, just because I'm just wired that way. But has it just been like in the last year that you've really struggled with sleep?
It's been the last couple of years. But I've always been one of these people that gets like 5 and 6 hours of sleep. Not that that's a good thing, but it's just been the way I've always been. That's the way I've always been wired. I'm dating myself again, but everybody knows my age now, I guess. I used to watch Johnny Carson every night and get up at 5 in the morning. That's just to go to work. And that's just always been me. I get up and do my cardio before I go to the gym. So I'm usually up every day by God at the latest 6:30. If I sleep in at 7, but I'm up. And it doesn't matter what time I go to bed. It's just my clock. I'm like 6 o'clock, 5:30. Boom, I wake up, and even if I got home, let's say I worked an evening shift and got home and went to bed at 1, I'm still up at 6. I just my brain just wakes up. So that's just something I really am looking at how important it is for recovery, though, and there's got to be a reason when you're working so hard and your body part's not coming up, and that's the only thing I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle too with the technology too, where it's like you got to put the phones away, everyone. That's a big thing that we hear
Yes.
of all the time. But yeah, that's a whole sleeping thing is just a whole such an important thing. I mean, it's the most important thing when it comes to recovery. I always say there's almost not a better feeling in the world than after you've worked out, like you've done a really hard training day, and you might have gone to work and done that extra hard too. If you wake up after a proper amount of sleep, you feel like a superhero basically, where you just feel so
Yeah.
well rested. I mean, I always say that is one of the best things on the planet. But out of all the divisions to compete in, what about physique really stood out to you when it chose to deciding what you wanted to compete in?
Um, no shoes. I hate those shoes. I did no, and the truth is I felt like that was what my body was best suited for. A part of the reason I did figure was just out of laziness for me personally. I was just not wanting to go through all the prep of the doing the routines and the music and all, because it's a lot of preparation. It's just so much more, and the training has never been an issue. I love that part of it. I've always loved the training. It's just the preparation for physique was a little harder, but physique is just more. I feel like that's kind of like that thing, that expression. You feel like you're home, and I just think my body's better suited for it, and now I'm really loving it. I'm really enjoying it. But the posing is hard. That's the hard part.
She leads me perfectly right into my next question. But before that, I do have to say the heels are one thing that we, hear of all the time. When I always ask, what was that struggle like with those heels? And for people out there
Oh,
who don't know what that is, I mean, they're making these people walk out in high heels doing their posing. I mean, their
yeah.
posing alone is hard enough in and of itself. But we had a funny story where one lady told us her coach said that, like go out to eat in like those heels, like to just get you used to like what they're feeling. Most people don't realize they look kind of like stripper heels, everyone. So like
They
if you're
do.
going out there in public like that, that might not be the best thing to do, but I'll leave it at that. But you said it perfectly. Where when I said probably the number one thing that I would have never guessed in my entire life is that for so many of these competitors, posing is the hardest thing. It's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than your working out. I mean, I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
Um, it's been tough. I mean, the hardest thing I had that I had to master for me personally was my back pose, and I had to have the back pose because that's my money shot. And this was when I initially started. I did figure, and for some reason, I just had trouble opening up. I had trouble doing that, so that was one hurdle. Then I started doing physique, and I had known how to do the poses for the most part from bodybuilding. So that came a little easier, but one thing that happened this year is I decided to hire, because I use Ken Mollick, who is the best. He's just the
We've
master
had plenty
of.
of people on here that have been trained by him, and for anyone out there who doesn't, he is like the go-to trainer or
Oh,
the go-to
he's
posing coach too, as well. Yeah, yep.
phenomenal. But I decided to also hire a local posing coach who's really good. His name is Mike Connell, and he has a company called Flux Artistry. And having them both for me, one of the things I noticed, or I learned, I observed watching Mike, is I sucked. And I mean, and it's funny because people will say, "Oh, you're just being hard on yourself," or "You don't suck. It couldn't be that bad." Oh no, no, I sucked. So it's almost like you think it's just like dieting. You're doing it, getting ready for a show, and if you don't know the leanness that you're trying to achieve, Usually, what I'll tell people, when you think you're lean enough, you're probably halfway there. Okay. So it's the same thing when I started working with Mike Connell is one of the things I realized is how bad my posing was, how mechanical it was, and how it just didn't flow because he is so good at it. It's like watching a ballet dancer. So one of the things about the sport that is so, I think, great is that you really have to take yourself on and you really have to make yourself vulnerable and put yourself in front of this person that is a master and has got to be the most patient man I've ever met in my life because I was so bad. And I know he's probably thinking, oh my God, I mean, maybe I need to charge her more. It was just, it was so bad. And by the time and I started with him quite early in the process, like 4 months early, just because I wasn't sure what to do as far as how long it's going to take, that kind of thing, because I hadn't worked with him before. And then at the same time, still worked with Kenny. So it totally changed things for me. He just totally helped me to, I guess, even like appear more confident. To my arm styling was better. It was just that whole thing where you just sometimes have to put yourself in a really vulnerable place like that so that you can improve and it's like surrounding yourself with the best of the best so that you can get better instead of being the best person amongst the worst. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
And it's just such a time process too, where like you said, you went to it, at least you went to them 4 months early. Cause I mean, we've had so many guests talk about how, some people when they first get started, they wait until like 2 weeks before their first show to like
yes.
learn to pose. And it's like, I always cringe every time I hear that where I'm just like, oh my God, that's not going to end well. Cause I had a friend in college who did that.
No.
And I
Yeah.
went to his show and I was just like, I tried to keep it positive, but I was like, okay, I felt bad for them. But out of your physique poses, what is your favorite pose to do? And what is your least favorite pose to do?
My favorite is abs and is oh geez.
Abs and thighs?
Yeah, abs and thighs. I don't know. It just wasn't coming.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, my favorite's abs and thighs, I would say. And no, I take that back. That's probably my second favorite. My favorite's back because that's my money shot. That's the shot that is usually the winning shot for me because my back is pretty good. Yeah.
So what is your least favorite?
My least favorite. I don't really have a least favorite, I guess. I like them all. I just think it's fun. I mean, I like doing the poses. That part I like. I don't like doing the routines that much. That's probably my least favorite part of competing. I love I love doing the comparisons with the other girls on stage. So that part is fun.
Okay, so you are our first guest that's ever said that they like doing the abs and thighs shot. I mean, that is always the least favorite for almost every guest that I've had on. So again, we have another first for everything. I just think because for so many people that seems kind of like a weird pose where I mean, it's kind of hard to make that look like natural and kind of flowing when you're just going like that. But yeah, I mean, you found
I
it a way.
think because I have such good posing coaches, I think when you can get your ab, because I don't even have the greatest abs, but when you can get your abs and thigh to flow into one, you know, unit, it looks beautiful. So, and that's the thing because my quads are one of my best body parts. I'm able to get everything, and that's because I was taught by them how to do it. So that's the secret. I think if you take the time to just, you know, find that sweet spot, then it makes all the difference in the world, and I'm one of these people that if it's really hard for me, I try even harder to get it. You know what I mean? I try not to shy away from the things that are difficult for me because I want to I'm just very stubborn, tenacious.
I found that most bodybuilders are because it's just that determination, that drive that you need to have too. You need to be a little stubborn too, where you need to just keep. You're gonna get pushed down a lot, but you gotta just be able to keep getting back up. But another thing with posing though that I never realized is that for some of these competitors, or a lot of them, I mean, you're going to get more of a workout in during your posing sessions than you are during your
Yeah.
actual workouts, just because, I mean, you're twisting and you're contorting, and I mean, you're flexed all the time. And I mean, there's just so much more to it than a lot of people don't realize. I always said if I ever competed, the back pose would be my favorite, just because that's the one time where I could put my smile down a little bit, where I could just relax just a tad, where I can just be like, okay, calm down just a little bit. But we did have one guest from Australia come on, and she was talking about how she was told that she got third place in a show and she would have got second, but she had let her smile down for about 20 seconds during
Oh,
during
geez.
when they were doing like when they were calling everyone out to like do the pose, because her last name started with a B, so at the very end she had to be on stage for like 45 minutes while everyone was doing that. So that is another thing where, I mean, I always got to say these competitors' jaw muscles are
That's
probably the
just so
sorest out of everything.
silly, though. I mean, come on. Well, and then for me, the posing's always been a little challenging because I have a little bit of a scoliosis. And for this year, it was even more so because I actually had I had a pretty severe back injury a few years back, and what's happening is as I get older, occasionally my back will flare up, and so I actually had to take off a year and take off time from work and that sort of thing. And I think that my body compensated, so I have this lateral tilt that I'm working on now. And so with the posing, it's quite a challenge because I had to hide that all this year. I didn't. That's what I was really worried about going into it this year, because of the lateral tilt. I had knee issues because of the imbalance in my right side, and I was, voicing the concerns to my coach, and he was like, "No, no, we're good. Let's just keep going." So I joke with people that I did my duct tape myself together, the David Goggins duck yourself duct tape, and just go for it, and just I figured I'll rest it later, and it worked out great. I mean, but it's a challenge. The posing is tough.
And that is like one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people don't understand, that because they just look at these comparisons. Like I was telling you before we started recording, they just think that it's just going to the gym, working out, and then you go on stage and you hit up some poses. They don't realize all the stuff that goes down on that. And the biggest one for me, as you can tell, everyone in the audience can tell, I'm one of the palest people that you'll ever meet. My thick Norwegian skin, I mean, I got to put an SPF of 1 million if I go outside. Otherwise, I'm going to get burnt to an absolute crisp. So I've never been tan a day in my life. I either get farmer's tan or just burnt. And let's be honest, farmer's tan is not a real tan, but bodybuilders get tan. So I always like to ask, what is that feeling like for you when you look in the mirror? And I mean, because we hear so many stories about how, you get to see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out when you get that tan on. What is that experience like for you?
What's weird is when I always feel like when you get the tan at first, it kind of almost like makes it less noticeable because it's so dark. But I like having the tan because I feel like it makes me feel like I have a wetsuit on, so I don't feel as naked. I've never liked the feeling of it though. It just feels yucky. It's kind of. But another thing I do is I tan a little bit before I get the actual spray tan, just because I feel like it makes the tan look a little nicer, and your tan doesn't seem so fragile. Because a lot of those tans, and if you're really white and you have a really fragile tan, you have to get a lot more touch ups. And if you already have a pretty good base, that doesn't happen as much anyway.
I would have to get about 10 touch ups. Let's be honest. I would be one of those guys where I'd be going in for like a month straight every day getting a tan, basically.
Oh my god! I mean, and I mean, it's just such a silly sport in that regard, with the tanning. But if you don't have a tan, if you've ever seen someone on stage with no tan, that there was a guy one time at a show I went to, just to see a friend or something, and he comes on stage, and I actually even said tan, and I think I said it too loud. I didn't mean to. It just kind of came out. The guy was spectacular. He would have clearly won the show. He placed second because of the tan. And according to him, he said, because I saw him at a different show, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, I saw you at such and such, and what was up with the no tan?" And he said because he sweats a lot when he poses and it drips. But still, I mean, oh my gosh, I was just like, you could have won. I told him. I
Well, I was
mean,
gonna
you
say
would
they
have
have that sweat
clearly.
resistant tan too that I think there's a type of brand for it. But yeah, I always said you could be the most in shape person on the planet, and if you didn't have that tan down or if you didn't have the pose down, I mean, good luck with that. But I mean, for me, it would always kind of be like that. I always like to say the sun would the light would reflect off me so much that it would blind everyone. They wouldn't even be able to see anything if I even brought anything to the stage. But yeah, so and
Well, under those lights, I mean, everything looks really washed out. So, if like I have pictures that somebody posted a picture of me with in the lobby, posing, and I look like a orange renal failure patient, because it looks terrible if you're not under the lights. But when you're under the lights, it looks beautiful. I mean, it's just perfect. It's just, but
absolutely. And another question that I love to ask all of my guests, whether they be, my bands or my up and coming, musicians and my bodybuilders. For my bands, I always ask, what is that feeling like when you get to go up on stage and perform live in front of, hundreds to thousands of people? That also applies to the bodybuilders that I have on. What is that feeling like when you get to walk up on stage and show off all of that hard work that you've worked months upon months, even years on?
I think that for me, the doing the routine is a blur. I mean, it just happens so fast. But I think what happens too is it's that's why it's so important. I think to work and really be honest with yourself during your prep, and try to get into that zone where you are really really giving it your best shot. And if that means you're gonna cheat every once in a while, I mean, so be it. We're all human. But if you can get in the zone and get that prep perfect, or as close to perfect as possible, when you go on stage, that, and I think that's a really important thing to know, that I did my best. I worked really hard, and this is what I got. Um, because for me, I don't really look at myself and say, yes, I'm ready, or no, I'm ready. I really have a coach that I trust. And if he says I'm ready, I'm ready, because I don't see myself the way other people do. And I mean, that's something I've had to learn about myself. I don't know if it's body dysmorphia, if you could call it. I mean, I look at myself and I think that I look good, but not pro card good, let's say. When I did my show, I wasn't sure. I was more concerned about, geez, my biceps hadn't come up more, that kind of stuff. Um, but I love being up there, and like I said, with the other women, doing the comparisons, doing the pose downs is so much fun. The comparisons are great, because that's a competition to me. When you're standing side by side with other competitors, and you're flexing, and you're flexing your biceps, and you're showing them your triceps, and you know that those are your good shots, and your back and your legs and all this stuff. To me, that's the fun part of the competition. The routine is great, but that's not really where you're showing your stuff. You know what I mean? So for me personally, I don't know. It feels good. I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. It's, yeah.
I'm just finding it funny how you talk about how you didn't think your biceps would really pop or whatever when guys a third your age would kill to have arms like that. I mean, that just boggles my mind. But I mean, I always love to ask with pro cards, at least when you win your pro card, for everyone out there. I mean, for a lot of these competitors, that is the highlight of their career, just because that is the affirmation that all that hard work that they put into the gym has really really paid off. What was that like for you when they announced your name and you realized that you're a pro now?
It really hit me right before I went on stage, because I had been dead center. And when I got my pro card, it had been about 6 years that I'd been, working for it. I'd had injuries. I had to take a year off. I had, lots of disappointments. I had changed coaches, things like that. And so when I started to step on stage, I'm waiting for them to finish up the other division. And I stood there and I started to kind of tear up a little bit, because I was like, oh my gosh, I think I actually did it this time. And it was really emotional. And so when I got it, it was kind of funny, because if you listen to the video um, of the show, my boyfriend even got emotional, because we have been wanting. I mean, he's been with me the whole time, and he's seen me go through everything I'm telling you, and he was just so elated. And then not only did I win in the 60 and over, I won in the 55 and over. I won the overall in the 55. Then I got second place in the 50 and over, and then I got second place in the 45 and over. So to win it, it's like I told my coach, I always knew that I would get a pro card because I was not, I mean, failure was not an option. So I would have kept doing it till they just finally said, "Lady, go away. Here's your pro card. Go, just go." And but I never dreamed that it would be that I'd win like that. So it was just the icing on the cake. It was so wonderful.
That is just so awesome, and yeah, just to experience that, I mean, I can't imagine what that must have felt like. But now we go to a fun question though. What is your go-to post-show meal?
My go-to post show, I always have a cocktail. Always have a cocktail. I just want a cocktail. And in Pittsburgh, we've gone to Pittsburgh so many times. We have our own driver. We have friends in the city. It's kind of funny. We always go to this bar called Roland's where they have amazing food, pizza, mussels, really good food, and they have a nice bar. So we usually go there and have pizza. That's usually pizza. So yeah, pizza, mussels, bread, anything with bread or carbs.
I always said if I ever competed, I would go to a Five Guys and just be like, "Here's $1,000. I'm buying you out for the night. Feed me until I either die,
Oh
pass
yeah,
out,
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
throw up." I mean,
yeah, yeah.
either way. But a big thing that I love to bust on this podcast, because I still have these friends that are just shocked by this, but a lot of people don't realize that that look that you guys put on stage, that is not a sustainable look. I mean,
No,
people think, I think it's based, I think it comes down to the fact that there are a lot of shows, like Biggest Loser, where people go on and they lose all this weight, and a lot of times they're able to keep it off. Where they just look at that, and then they look at bodybuilders, and they just assume that you guys are able to maintain that look because of all of the hard work that you've put into it. But they don't realize you guys have sort of manipulated your body through all of the dieting and through all of the all of the working out to a look that, I mean, it is not sustainable. We've had people that they try to maintain it, but it's a little unhealthy because you're going to be at such an unhealthy body fat percentage. But what has that been like for you, realizing that I'm not going to be able to maintain this look that I put on stage? And has it gotten easier for you to accept that and sort of appreciate that as your career's gone on?
yeah, for me it has because I don't like being that skinny. I like being a little bit thicker. And I'm even leaner right now than normal because my metabolism when we started because we do a proper reverse diet right after the show. I mean, I eat what I want for 3 days, and then Johnny makes us start. My coach is Johnny Castellana, and he likes us to start right away the following Monday back on the reverse. And the reason that is because we can put on more good quality muscle. If you have to take all the fat that you've put on because you binged for 2 weeks, because the body really stores it more so because it doesn't like being that lean. So, and if you have to work on that, then it really stunts your growth. So if you're really trying to put on muscle like I am, that's kind of scares you straight. You're like, okay, no, I don't want to have to do my half of my off season getting this fat off that I've. So it's gotten easier. It's still tough, but my metabolism really kicked in fast. So I was able to get my cheat meal back within God, less than 2 weeks. So we get one cheat meal a week. We're still doing our reverse, and he does it really slowly. And the reverse diet is actually harder than the regular diet because you're starving. You get really hungry because your metabolism kicks in. So I think that's the hardest part, more so than the competition diet. We're still doing our cardio quite a bit because normally we only do like 20 minutes of cardio a day. But when you're reversing out of the contest diet, you're still doing 40 minutes of cardio, which I hate. That's the worst part.
I could never do that myself. Yeah, I am not a cardio person
Oh
at
no, it's
at
it's
all.
awful. It's awful. Like people, one of my friends asked me, "Well, if you hate it, why do you do it?" I said, "Well, I hate coming to work too, but I got to do it. I mean, come on, you got to do if you want to."
I
be
say the same thing to my
successful.
friends. We're like, you work way too much, and I was like, well, guess what? I pay for when we go out to eat sometimes. So I know you. Guess what? You gotta substitute it. But I always say
Yeah.
it's just like starting your own business, where you got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. You got to spend money if you want to make money. It's this.
Yes.
It's the
Hmm.
same thing basically, where people just need
Yes.
to realize that. But two questions that I love ask. They're probably my favorite questions to ask on the podcast. For the first one, I mean, there were so many positive things that happened when I started, working out and getting bigger and stronger. But one of the negative things is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars or bottled water or anything that's really sealed on tight. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next 2 months before I move out. And every single time they come home with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and then carry in the groceries for them, being the
Uh,
good son that I am. But has that been a similar experience with you, where when people take one look at you, especially the way that you look now, and, as you get closer to shows, where they just assume that you can do favors for them?
yes. Yeah. At work. Here, Sylvia can do it, or get Sylvia. Or it was so funny. One time they even had like an emergency something where they had to lock the hospital down. And oh, I'm just going to get behind Sylvia. I'm like, what are you talking about? They think you're like a superhero or something, and it's just so silly because I tell people I'm not necessarily that strong. I can't open things the way I mean, just because you have muscles.
Yeah.
It's just funny to me. But yeah, yeah, I do. I don't get asked to help people move though, but I'm sure I would if I was a guy.
Oh, well, I always say it's a double-edged sword, because being 6'3", I could have zero muscle at all, and they just be like, "Oh yeah, tall guy, come and do it." So yeah, that is one thing where, I mean, even a couple days ago, I got a message, "Hey, this weekend I'm moving. You want to come help me move?" And I said, "Well, first of all, I don't want to, but I'll do it." But so I always tell them it's got to be after I work out though, because I'm not going to get too tired moving your stuff where I'm not going to be able to then work
Well,
out
you should make them
that
buy
day.
you dinner too.
Well, that's usually what I do too. Yeah, we usually go out for dinner. That's part of the stipulation in the
Yeah.
contract that I negotiate with them. But my audience favorite question and my favorite question to ask is, obviously your clothing options can be limited when you are a
Oh yeah.
bodybuilder. See, we get that reaction all the time. For guys it's a little bit different, but for women, I always like to say, if you have big broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time, because if you have a big lower body and a small waist, jeans are not made for that. What have been some ways that you are found that you're able to compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be limited, and the fact that you basically have to have two wardrobes, your off-season wardrobe and your prep wardrobe?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Leggings are actually really popular, and I actually have been finding some very nice slacks looking leggings. So I've been doing that. Um, Pants so far haven't been too much of an issue for me, and I do have pretty big legs, but I don't know. It doesn't, and I don't like real high waisted clothes. So that's another thing I think why it makes it easier for me, because I try to like I have trouble finding workout pants because I don't like the real high waisted ones. I like still the regular ones. So that makes it easier. Upper body stuff is getting harder. I find that as long as I do something that's either like sleeveless or like a cami, something that just has little spaghetti straps or something, but then you look so boom, boom, boom.
You got to let those arms breathe though. I mean, you can't really have them
You
restricted.
know,
Yeah.
I don't really have a problem except that people don't leave you alone.
Yeah, that too.
You can't go anywhere without. That's one of the things that I have a problem with is that let's say I'll be in Whole Foods Market and I'll be at the salad bar and I happen to go in there with a tank top. And I'm always very covered up when I work out because I'm comfortable that way. It's very old school and I'm just really comfortable. So I wear a t shirt all the time. And so I'm in Whole Foods Market, and this woman, with a tank top, this woman actually came up to me, touching me, oh my God. And I'll be like, do I know you? Excuse me? Oh my God, look at your stomach, look at your arms, or I'll be at Starbucks, paying for my coffee, and excuse me, are you a bodybuilder?
No, I just do this for fun.
Oh my gosh. And I'm just like, oh, and then if you don't answer them, then you're, you know. So I don't like a lot of attention like that. So I'm pretty covered up everywhere I go.
Well, and I always said I experienced that a little bit when I was in college, and I was a lot bigger than I am now. I've lost a little bit of it because I do a 40-hour week job and this podcast. But just even still, sometimes now going into bars, you're going to get asked to arm wrestle all the time. I mean, that's just the thing,
How
and it's
much
just,
do you bench? I
oh
love
my
that. How
god,
much do you
yeah. And I
bench?
just say more than you when they ask me that. That's really the only way to get down to that. But yeah, I mean, we hear that
Yeah.
all
And
the time.
with me, I have my teammate Andrea. Her name is Andrea Fitzer, and she amazing bodybuilder. She's a figure competitor, amazing, and she gets so much negative comment, as far as like insulting, mean stuff, yeah, and one of the things that I have to say at 60 years old, nobody bothers you like that anymore. And I think because I don't know if it's you're less than a threat, you're less of a threat because you're not going to be chasing after their boyfriend. They're thinking, I have no idea, but it's all positive for the most part at this age. I just don't like the attention.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well yeah, absolutely, yeah. If it was like, yeah, I mean, it's like you're like a celebrity without being like a movie star, basically, where it's just
I
you
guess
become like a
so.
human art exhibit. That's the best way I can really describe it when you go out in public like that. So yeah, we do. I mean, yeah, I sometimes too. I just want to just be left alone, but yeah, yeah. So yeah,
Well,
that
my massage therapist, she tells me that. She says she says you guys are like celebrities.
yeah.
She says you guys are. You're just like, I mean, because there aren't people that look like you.
Yep.
If you walk around, you don't. And then if you go to another state, even more so. You just stick out like a sore thumb.
Oh yeah,
You're like this
if you were up here in
anomaly.
Minnesota, yeah, there'd be photographers probably waiting for you every time like you left the home, or would be like, check out this 6-year-old, holy crap, because yeah, we are known as one of the more healthier states, but it's mainly because of like yoga and stuff like that. That don't even get me started on that type of stuff. The amount of times I've been asked to go and try and do that, but being that you are in the medical field, I always like to ask all of the guests that we have that are in the medical field. I mean, you're in a job where you sometimes deal with people that have been dealt, a rough hand in life. They might have, they might just be suffering from something. How much more motivation does that give you to just realize the fact that, hey, I'm a healthy and strong, 60-year-old, and I'm able to go to the gym and I'm able to work out? Does that just add on to your motivation, just realizing that, you are more blessed than a lot of these people that you might be dealing with at your job?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think about that all the time. I think that people in general, don't realize, how much they take for granted. It's like you only have, you have this body, and we're very blessed to be able to do anything. And the fact that I can still do this sport and be pretty good at it, and part of the part of the fun or appeal of the sport too, also for me, is that it motivates so many other people, so many women, because it kind of like sometimes you have to do something before other people feel like they have permission to do it. You know what I mean? And it's just like, well, if so and so did it, I can do it, and anybody can do it. It's just a matter of how much time do you want to put into it, and it takes a lot of time to be. I mean, it's pretty much consumes a very large part of my life, and it also it also takes a special person as your partner, because it's a very selfish sport. My partner's a competition shooter, so he understands because we both have these very selfish sports, and it's very time consuming, very expensive both. But that's what is the commonality on for us, is that we both understand that this is a really important thing to this other person, and so um, but I just feel really blessed. I mean, and I think people. I mean, no matter how old you are, I mean, your age, your health is such a blessing. I have a coworker that just passed away from brain cancer that was like 20 years younger than I am. So you don't know. That's the thing. You don't know. You know that you're always going to be healthy, and I mean, it's and for me, my goal right now is to just be a really healthy 80-year-old. So I really watch my joints, and I try to take care of my health in that way, and make sure that I'm not having all these aches and pains. I'm not on any medications. I'm not on watch my blood pressure.
I think she'll be good enough to be an 80-year-old, a fit and strong 80-year-old. I think she's off to a really good start. But now we go to our last part
I
of the
hope
pod.
so.
Yeah, well, for sure. Now we go to our last part of our podcast, a little questionnaire. We're going to ask Sylvia here about a half dozen or so questions that we ask all of our health and fitness guests, and we're going to see how her answers stack up to everyone else that we've had on the show. So for our first question, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
Oh, geez. Geez, geez, geez. Right now, cucumber, frozen cucumber.
That is the first time that we've ever had that answer. So you're gonna be like 170th bodybuilder on the podcast, and that's the first time that we've heard frozen cucumber.
Frozen cucumber.
I mean, I always said it's either chicken or rice, or chicken, rice, or egg whites are the three most popular ones. But yeah, so frozen cucumber, we got that. But now, out of all of your followers on Instagram, what do you think would be one thing that they would be most surprised to find out about you if they met you in person?
If they met me in person, I think that I'm not completely consumed with the food and diet stuff. I'm just like so not into the perfection. And that's one of the reasons I love my coach, because he is not into I mean, we have clear guidelines, but it's not about perfection. It's not about, I don't know. I just think that I'm so done with that, having to have everything perfect and stressing out because you ate two almonds or you ate, extra. That I just no.
That is such a great attitude to have, because I can tell you, I mean, I've talked to so many bodybuilders, and some of them just don't really have that lackadaisical, or not that lackadaisical, but that lax attitude where it's just, hey, you might eat stuff, you might just, slip up every once in a while, but it's just important to realize that, I mean, if you do it once, nothing's going to change. I mean, if you, to do like one cheat, I mean, yeah, it's so just,
We eat so much more than people understand. The one
yep.
thing I get asked, oh, you don't eat carbs. I eat a ton of carbs. I carb cycle. That's what we do,
That's what people don't understand, is that, yeah, you eat more than the average person by far. That's one thing that I loved. I was like, yeah, I can eat more and I can still look good. It's like, are you kidding me? Sign me up. But
Yeah,
yeah.
and physique competitors, we eat
Oh,
even more.
absolutely.
My boyfriend will be like, "Is that all for you?" And I'll be, "Yeah." So, I mean,
No, yeah, I totally understand that. But now, if we were to talk to you a year from today, what are some goals that you would like to have achieved, if in your bodybuilding, I mean, in your regular life, what are some goals that you would like to have accomplished if we were to talk a year from today?
a year from today, I would like to have won my first pro show. I am preparing for that now. So I was going to wait a little while, but I think I'm going to just go ahead and do it next year. Nothing's in stone, but we'll see. But that's my plan. And just to keep improving, and just everything I do to win. I don't. Some people just want to place. I want to win. And I think I can. I have an amazing coach. I'm going into my third year with him, so he really knows my body now, and I feel like he knows how to feed me. He knows what works for me, um, and that's I just want to keep getting better. And it's kind of crazy because I'd like to keep doing this till I'm 65 at the very least. So yeah, I just want to win my first pro show.
And that's awesome. We'll have her on again in a year, and and you'll be talking about how you won your first pro show. Because
Yes, I
honestly,
will.
honestly, I think you will. But now, lastly, if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
The 18-year-old, geez. Gosh, probably get through my schooling a lot earlier. I think that's really important. It just, I think I'd still be a nurse. It's a great job. It's a great way to make a living, and it's a very respectful field, and it's very satisfying. But I don't know. I mean, there's parts of me that wishes I was a trainer, but I don't know that in reality, thinking about it right now, I don't know. But mainly get those things out of the way, get the schooling out of the way, save your money. I mean, the things my dad used to tell me. Buy a house earlier.
Your dad seemed like a very smart person. I'm just gonna say that, just from all the
He
advice he
was
gave
in
you.
a
Yeah,
lot of ways.
yeah.
Yeah, no, he really was.
I would tell myself, first of all, yeah, like invest in Apple, invest in Amazon. If I could go back in time and
Yes.
talk to the 18-year-old version of myself, there's going to be a little startup company. I give him all that personal type of stuff. But the final two questions that I saved for the very end of the podcast, for the first one, I mean, it was a myth that, I mean, I love busting this every single podcast. I ask every single guest, so it gets a little. My audience says, we hear this all the time, but it's just so important. I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years, but there's just still so many women that have that fear where if they go to the gym and they pick up one weight, they do one bicep curl, they do one anything with that involves weight in your body, even body weight, that you're just going to, put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And I mean, obviously that's not the case. I always said, the government would probably kidnap you and try to like put your genetics in every single person on the planet. I mean, you'd be the biggest commodity of all time. And obviously, when you got started, because I always say, did you have that fear when you were getting started? But when you got started, that wasn't a myth. That was considered a fact where, if you went to the gym and you started working out, you're going to get really, really huge. But how do you deal with that now? Because I bet you still hear that all the time from women.
Well, I always tell people it takes real effort. It doesn't happen by accident. And let's say, by some miracle it does, you just stop
Yeah.
and it'll go away. It goes away really fast.
And then give me a call,
So,
please, so I can talk to you.
yeah, well, that
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Give me a call. But I mean, most people aren't going to put muscle on. I mean, and I'm talking 99%.
Yep.
It's just not going to happen. And we joke around. It's like Arnold used to say when people, why wouldn't want to look like you? Well, don't worry, you never will. And it's really, really true. These things take a lot of effort, or I'll hear things like, I was in a market again, I had to run in with shorts and a tank top. Oh, I would die to have that body. Well, I'm just like, no, you
You'll
wouldn't.
probably die trying then. Yeah.
It's like, no, I don't think you would die because you're not even living to have my body. Come on.
And people, again, they don't realize the hard work and the sacrifice that entails. But now, lastly, here's where you embarrass us the most. So what are your best lifts in the gym?
My best lifts? Geez, I don't know. Everything having to do with back. That's my first love. I love those workouts.
I know you're probably gonna ask this all the time, but what is your best bench?
I don't bench.
Oh, you don't bench?
No.
Wow.
No, we do a little bit of chest, but we don't know. Mm-mm.
That's one thing that I've actually found out with bodybuilding specifically, where a lot of it isn't really bench though, because I mean, you can
No.
find that activation in other exercises that
No,
doesn't
and we
come
don't
with
do.
bench.
I mean, I don't do a whole lot of. I have pretty good, pretty good chest, especially when I cut down. So we're just doing maintenance. So we do just basically some presses and flies, and nothing crazy, and not even a lot. Not even a lot of that. It might just be one exercise. One superset.
Oh, all right. Well, and again, you guys, we cannot thank Sylvia enough for coming on the podcast. It was so great having you on
Oh,
and
thank you so much for
sharing your
having me.
story.
I really appreciated
And now, lastly, just to embarrass us again, can you give us a front double bicep then, so we can just say, "Oh my God, okay,
it.
60 years old? Are you absolutely kidding me? That is absolutely insane, everyone." So,
Well,
Sylvia,
thanks.
thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.